morning, Rob here from the Flanagan Homestead and East Fork Christmas Tree Farms. I'm out at the tree farm today. It is November 12th, I believe, 12th or 13th, something like that. I am going to do winter planting, which is not traditional. Not that people don't do it, but it's not traditional here in the Pacific Northwest. Usually we are all the majority of Christmas trees out here are bare root and planted in the spring. But through 20 years of trial and error, we're always changing, and we may change off this, but right now we're thinking that planting plugs, based on our experience last year in this extreme heat, none of our bare root made it. I mean, zero, but record-breaking heat this last year. But some of our plugs made it, not a high percentage, but some of our plugs made it. But also the fact that everything was planted in the spring, I think put us at a slight disadvantage. Now normally the springs and summers are wet enough here in the Pacific Northwest, but they seem to be getting drier, that they can handle it the first year. So as it gets harder and harder, we are looking at ways to make it our planting, our seedlings, take off. And so one of the things that we've decided to do is plugs seem to be doing a little bit better. I know that they're a little bit smaller, so we're going to have to wait another year for them to go. But also we want to plant them in the winter or in the fall, and so that I'll show you the chart, but we have charts from Oregon State University that show that, we think the trees are dormant in the winter, but actually October and November, there's no growth above ground, but below ground there's a significant root growth in October and November. Then the whole tree tends to go a little bit more dormant, although there is still a little bit of root growth, and then the roots start growing a couple months before the trees bud out and start growing. So if we plant here in November, actually, I want to be honest, ideally we should have done this. I was planning to do this in mid-October when we know the ground is going to be wet and it's going to be raining a lot here. I got busy and I'm a little upset with myself. Planting this in early or mid-October would have been much better. I think the water would have been in the ground, and like I said, root growth happens a lot in October, and that would have been going in the ground, sinking those further in the ground and be ready to handle next year's heat better. But also by putting them in the ground now, sometimes you wonder, did we pack the dirt in tight enough? Or is it really tight around the soil? But we're going to be getting rain for months. And so instead of putting them in, some people do it as late as April. I've even seen people do it as late as May, which I think is crazy. We typically had planted ours late February, early March. But if we put them in now, there's going to be another 20, 30 inches of rain on the ground and really packing them in before they try to grow. So winter planting or late fall planting, this is actually, technically considered late fall, but or early winter planting. I would have ideally have done this in October, but we're doing it in early or mid-November. We're going to get in the ground, and we think we're going to have better plantings. Even though I haven't done a whole lot commercially planting, I have transplanted many Christmas type trees on my personal property around, and when I've transplanting those in the fall, I seem to have a higher percentage of survival rate, and they really thrive when they've been in the ground all winter and then they take off. So here we go. So today we're going to be planting 1,500 trees. We want to do more this year, but that's as many plugs as we could get. We're going to try to get some more bare root in the spring, and we'll do that, although that won't be as ideal. It still works. But so our plugs basically are planted in small cells, and then they keep the dirt around them. These are smaller plugs than we've done in the past. Well, in years past we did some larger plugs, and then we have a planting dibble that we've used in the past, where this has a leg to stand on right here. You stand and stomp that in the ground, and then it creates a hole, and then you just drop this in and work the soil around. We weren't as thrilled with the success of that. When we got some augers out here, and just a 6-inch auger, and then drilled the holes, it kind of tilled up the soil, and you can see behind me here, we had a lot of grass still growing. This is an old hay field that we're taking over with Christmas trees. And it really grew back. So what I did is we waited till we started getting rain and then I sprayed the fields when the grass was actively growing again and to kill it off. But there's still some roots in there and a little bit of grass growing in there. And so when we get the auger in there, it's basically a tiller of a 6-inch cone, and it really breaks up the soil and it's loose, and then we could drop the plug in and then pack it back down. Takes a little bit longer than the dibble, but it's worth it when a higher percentage of trees survive. So I'm not saying that this is always the best. I've had a friend that lived up with a different type of soil up in the hills and used the dibble, and he's done really well with it. But we choose to go the auger, break up the soil and the sod that it still is there, and then plant it with the auger. All right, here's my 6 boxes that contain 1,500 plugs. Yes, there's 5 boxes in there. I already dropped one out in the field. All right, so we're going to put one of our plugs in the ground in the augered hole. We are leaving the dead trees right here because we have basically insurance on this. They got to come and count the dead trees. But we're going to come in here, stick this in the ground, start pushing this back in. It's nice and easy. We are going to make sure it's packed in there, and we are intentionally going to have the tree maybe an inch below the native soil, so that it will have cooler, wetter soil later in the season. There we go. Okay, noble fir plug. Obviously they are smaller than our bare root, so we'd like the size of the bare root, but these survive better, so we're putting them in. But I'm just going to put this in the hole that I augered. I'm going to start pushing the soil back in. You can see that the dead tree is still here. That's there for the count on the insurance on the dead trees. But I'm going to keep pushing the soil in, make sure it's packed really well. You're going to see that this is lower. The native soil is right here. The tree is going to be about an inch lower than the native soil. That's just the ability to catch water and make sure that it's cooler, moister soil that it gets into during the hot part of the summer. And there you have it. I know it doesn't look that dark because the phone does a good job of changing it, but it's 4:24. It took us longer than we planned, but we just planted our last tree. So 1,500 trees in the ground, interspersed throughout the trees that have been harvested in the past. Start at 8, had one auger down for a couple hours, got 2 going. Barry and I jumped on them this afternoon, and 1,500 trees are in the ground, and hopefully we'll get a few more in the spring. Okay, I'm sitting here at the computer and editing, and I realized I didn't make something really clear. I expressed how we want to plant in early October, and we did it more mid-November. We couldn't do that because we hadn't killed the field the previous spring. And so we were waiting for the rains to come in the fall, and they came late this year. We wanted the rains to come so the grass started growing up again so that we could spray it and get a good kill with herbicide. Well, the rains came late, so we wanted to let the grass die out, and you could see it wasn't completely gone, but it was dying. And so then we started to run the auger through it, but with the grass that's dying there and the roots still in the ground, the auger would come in and clog up. It would catch the foliage on there, and it would clog up the auger, and it didn't dig really well. So what we need to do, so that the auger should go in our nice soil, just dig the hole in 2 seconds and be done with it. So we're going to do better on planning ahead next year. We're going to get our order in early. We're going to know how many we have, and we're going to spray in the spring the herbicide when all the grass and weeds are trying to come up. We're going to get that bare. We're going to spray it throughout the summer how long we need to keep it bare. And then when we come in the fall, we don't have to worry about the fall rains coming. We'll have those for our bare root trees. It'll already be bare dirt. Auger will hit the ground 2 seconds. The holes will be dug really quick.
In the midst of planting, we took a break for a
plugs
second
in the ground a month earlier, and we're going to get all that October, November root growth time going, and it's going to be even better. I'm pretty confident that what we planted this year is going to do really well. I think doing a better job having everything prepared for next year will give us even more success. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Flanagan Homestead and East Fork Christmas trees, where we did some fall planting of plugs instead of bare root in the spring because we want to take advantage of that October, November root growth time. Yes, the trees are a little bit smaller than the 2-1s or even the 2-0s that we get in the spring, but we get that root growth in the fall. We get a little bit more in the spring before they bud out, and we're going to have hopefully a lot better survival rate when the hot summers come around.